The big question any brand asks of its agency, am I getting real value for money? Well, let's discuss that now with Nick Schilperoort, Account Director and Strategic Planner at the agency X Facta. Very warm welcome and thanks for talking to us today. Now, you're suggesting, Nick, that there is a migration from traditional large agencies to a smaller dynamic agency model. Some might disagree with you, but what's your thinking?
So it's definitely becoming more apparent the more we look into the landscape that there is a migration taking place between the large-scale agency, as we traditionally know it, more into the specialist realm, where we're seeing pockets of excellence popping up, where there is a need from clients to particularly focus on relationships and services by these specialists. And that's where I think they're really trying to add their differentiation from the large-scale agency.
All right, the big agencies are going to counter that argument, and they're going to say we have the talent, we have economies of scale, and we have better proprietary tools. Defend that.
Yeah, I think they might come in with that, but I do also see it from a smaller specialist, and having been on both sides of the fence, that agencies or the larger agencies are very much at a point when they'll tell you these things. Whether they're actually living up to it is another thing, because there is often a cycle within the agency model, or the traditional agency model, that I almost see happening, where the larger your budget, the first in the line, or where you sit in the line in terms of servicing. So whereas a smaller specialist agency will guarantee you that that attention that I feel a lot of the medium to smaller fish sitting in the larger agencies aren't particularly getting.
The trouble for you guys in the smaller side, or the smaller end of that pool, is you've just got to fight harder for business, and often it's just simply, people will just default to the bigger agency, maybe just because of reputation.
Yeah,
how do you make the case? Where do you think that you can primarily add the value?
So for me, it really goes back to the fact of this thing called relationships and service. And I think, again, there is a massive gap that's being left out by the bigger agencies in terms of living up to this level of service that they promise. And then when they're actually coming into the stream, the smaller agency really has been been promised a world and really under-delivered. And that's where I think the smaller agency, although people might say they have a bigger war chest, whether they're actually addressing it is another thing.
It's always interesting that smaller agencies say this to me, but I'm going to say to you that all small agencies want to become big agencies ultimately.
Correct.
How do you meet the challenge of staying small, motivated, and being able to offer that bespoke service that you're articulating?
Again, it goes back to this thing that I agree. There is a temptation of growth, as you grow, to get bigger, and through the growth that you do be seen to not paying attention to the likes of what you used to be doing as a small agency. I think that's really up to the agency itself, as it goes through its growth pattern, to really look at that differentiation of service and consistently live up to that level of service.
And that's the biggest complaint often, Nick, that clients will have. They will say, and you make the point yourself, that there is a danger of overextending yourself.
Correct, and I mean that's just
so
natural.
how do you mitigate against that?
Well,
because all small agencies want to promise everything.
Correct, but also all big agencies want to promise everything, and that's why, for me, this world of collaboration is something that I personally am very passionate about, in terms of the smaller specialist agency with the need of larger agencies working together, because I understand that in the world of large clients, there is a need for a large one-shop type of scaled agency. But there's also the ability for the larger scaled agents to realize that there are specialist skills that they aren't able to fulfill.
And you make the point here, is there an opportunity for more collaboration between the bigger shops and the specialist? To what extent is that happening?
The more I work in the smaller specialist world, I'm actually surprised and blown away about how willing bigger agencies are starting to become to partner with smaller agencies.
Because they have their own capacity.
Correct, correct. But they also are starting to realize that there are certain skill sets that they do not have, and that they are trying to almost put the client first for a change, rather worrying about meeting the targets and keeping everything under one roof, which is a good shift, I think, taking place at the moment.
Nick Schilperoort, I think you have made your point. Thank you very much for joining us, Account Director and Strategic Planning or Strategic Planner at the agency X Facta.